What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the GGBL. We have phase 2 of our off-season of year number 2. We're leading into year 3. And I hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas. So I'm just going to get that right off the get-go here. Today is the 26th. Hope that everybody had a great time with their friends and family. We got New Year's Eve coming up on Friday the 31st, New Year's Day on Saturday. So, man, it's crazy. I remember when I was just getting ready to launch this thing in May of 2021 of this year. So, man, it's just time has flown by. But this video is going to fly by here pretty quickly too, because I got a lot of work ahead of me. Number one, I got to go through and make sure that the 40-man rosters for each team make sense. Then I have to offer arbitration, and that's just disrespectful right there. Hunter Wood, you're wearing a brown hat but the Atlanta Sting logo. Glitches, man, glitches. But yeah, we got tender contracts as well for players that were on one-year deals, but I want to determine who's going to come back. I'll let you guys know who is not coming back, right? So I got to make those tough decisions. These are the only things that I can control. If I asked you guys to do this and like vote on this as a community for every team, for all 30 teams, it would take another 3 weeks to get through the offseason, which is not good. But as you guys can see, our free agent list has been updated. So Vlad Guerrero Jr. is in there, Perez is in here, Altuve, Flaherty, Arenado, Buxton, you name it. Everybody that's in here is all updated. So we are good to go for free agent wheel spin. But that's not gonna be what happens in today's video. In today's video, I want to talk about a few things. I will update you guys on how the tendering contracts went. Now you can see in the upper right hand corner, this is on manual. So free agency is on manual, meaning the CPU is not going to offer any contracts to any of these big time players. No players at all. And the cool thing is about this format is it doesn't matter if I offer them a contract in November or if I offer them a contract here in January. If I'm the only one, if I'm the only bidder, they're going to have to accept that contract if they want to play baseball today. So that's the good thing about the wheel spin, is that no matter what month we do it, what month we get everybody updated, they're gonna end up signing with us because that's their only offer, right? So that's how the wheel spin gets affected into this. Trade talks, we're not going to do trades again for this offseason. Trades only happen in the GGBL for July 31st, the trade day, kind of like how the XBA does it. And what I will update you guys on is I'll try to spot some interesting topics and storylines for 40-man arbitration, tendering contracts, of course. Like I'm bringing back Joe Shotora, I'm bringing back Middlebrook, Dunn, Ruth, Beatty, all those guys you see on the screen. I'm bringing them back for the Good Boys organization. Let's just see, like the Miami Moonshots, for example, like Javon Brown, Xavier Hawkins, all those guys are coming back. So tendering contracts in the GGBL, nobody is lost pretty much. Now a guy like Nick Markakis, you know, for the Sting and where they're at, I would have to make that decision. I would probably elect to not bring him back. So that's kind of give you guys an idea of how I'm going to work this tendering contracts. Now arbitration is kind of working the same way. Albert Almora Jr., a 71 overall player, 28 B. You know, he's still got some good baseball left in him. So the Sting are bad. Maybe you replace Almora with Markakis' job. Maybe that makes sense. Hyun-Soo Kim, probably not bringing him back unless it was on a minor league deal. But just some examples for you guys real quick. So I'm going to run through here, and I'm going to take a look and see if there are anything that I can spot that really catches my eye. But you guys know who the free agents are. You kind of understand how that's going to work. 40-man, we're not doing the Rule 5. We don't do the Rule 5 in GGBL. So as long as the 40-man is set for each team, again, I'm not too worried about the CPU just jumping in and doing a Rule 5 draft pick on us, because that's not going to happen. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. So up on your screen, you can see the results, and I'm going to zoom in here really quick for you guys. So we're going to zoom in here big time. Is that good there? That's good. Okay, so I asked you guys in the last video to vote on some of the propositions. So which team in your mind deserves a new logo? We had 3 options to choose for. There was a tie. You guys, there were 12 and 12 that voted for Boston and Dallas. So Dallas and Boston are both going to get a new logo, and that's going to be like the B lettering and the Revolution lettering for Boston, and for Dallas it would also be their hat logo and their text logo for their jersey. So both things, so hat and jersey logos are going to both be changed for Boston and Dallas. So that's who won that vote. Which team in your mind deserves a new uniform design? Dallas also got the vote, so 14 votes compared to 6 for Houston and 9 for Indiana. So Dallas is also going to get an entire new jersey. So that's kind of cool. And they're also going to get a new hat. And then which team in your mind deserves a new custom stadium? This one was a pretty close vote between Indiana and Atlanta. So, 8-7. If one of these were a little bit closer, like 5 for Pittsburgh, 5 for Portland. If it was if it was like 6 or it was 7 for either one of these. If they tied with Atlanta, I would say that Indiana won, right? I can't give 3 teams a new stadium. But because these were so close and only one vote split the two of them, I'm going to award Indiana and Atlanta with new stadiums this season. So we've got kind of a tie. We had a tie here for Boston and Dallas with the new logo, and then we kind of have that tie there. So Indiana and Atlanta both getting a new stadium. Now, I have not gone through every single team yet, but I wanted to give you guys kind of an update with kind of what I did last season. But for those of you that are new here that might not have watched that off-season video, it's kind of long, but this is kind of what my thought process is. So really, when I go to, let's just say, a guy like Joshua Torres, so I'm going to withdraw that offer. So even though his contract is renewable, I want to be able to sign a guy so you can renew his contract at any price greater than 80% from last season. So I'm not really into that. I'm going to give him what he wants, especially when he wants 2 years at $180K, because it's kind of the asking price for a guy that's 77 overall, right? And it's very funny to me that they want such low dollar amounts of money, because it's all relative. Nobody's out here making the big bucks because we don't have a ton of MLB type of caliber players here, except for Bryce Harper, Juan Soto, so on and so forth. So they're not asking for a whole lot. You can see the available budget projected surplus down there, the pending offers at $8.8 million. That's going to get us knocked down from $80 million to about $72 million left to spend in free agency, which is more than enough, way more than we even need. We could go out here, we could sign Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Nolan Arenado. We could get lucky on the wheel spin. That could possibly happen. Just kidding, it can't happen because of the rules that are involved. But anyway, guys, what the point is that whatever these guys want, I'm going to give it to them. Okay? I'm going to go through each and every player on everybody's roster in the tender contracts except for 59s and below. So that's how I'm going to run this. So anybody 59 and below or 60 and below, if you have a B or an A potential, I'm going to offer you a contract. So just like this guy, Charles Wallace, he was a guy that we drafted apparently. Maybe not. He's 29 years old. Either way, A potential, 56 overall. He's going to be a minor league type of guy. A lot of these dudes anyway are just going to fill in as depth pieces for your minor league system. So I'm not interested in bringing any of these guys back. Okay, so that's how that's going to operate. I'm going to do the same thing with Philadelphia. For example, like Gordon Rosens. These guys have $53 million in available budget, and we're going to offer him that 1.5, actually a little bit, just sweeten the deal a little bit, $900K per year at 2 years, and he's happy. He'll probably end up signing. Same thing here with David Parkinson. We'll bring him back. Pretty much what I'm saying is that the GGBL teams don't really have a lot of wiggle room. They don't have a lot of, ability to say no to a 70 overall player like Eric Pena. They're not going to let that go. 70 A potential. Just give him what he wants. Francisco Morales, a 22-year-old player. They're not going to let that go either. Ben Ruda, yeah, he's 27. Some teams in your own little franchise, right? If you had an option to bring back Ben Ruda, would you? Maybe, maybe not. But, it's all relative. Philadelphia needs depth. They need a player like that. They're going to bring him back. All right, guys, so we are back. Ended up going through each and every team, as you guys can see. Woo! All done. Everybody's all finished up. All right, so let's talk about offering salary arbitration. So when we go into a team like Miami, they got Sir Anthony Dominguez, they got Josh Lindblom, Zue Lin, Lane Thomas, Matt Bush. There's a lot of players here that Miami would definitely want to consider bringing back. So a guy like Sir Anthony Dominguez, 83 overall, he's 27 years old. Could you get away with offering this guy arbitration? let's just see what we can do. So if we wanted to make him an offer at $7 million a year, you can lock him up for multiple seasons. However, if you get him in arbitration, it's 1 to 2 contract years, right? So you only get him for basically 2 more seasons under arbitration. So when a team is looking at this, like Miami, and you look at Seranthony Dominguez and just how valuable he was to this roster, 2.72, the K to walk ratio, it was about a 2, a little over a 2, 48 Ks, 21 walks. He was pretty solid for him at 37 saves, 6 blown saves, right? I think that would probably warrant a 3-year contract, get him to about 30 years old, and then you can start talking about possibly signing him for another 2-year deal, maybe a 4-year deal at that point, and just lock him up for the rest of his career, right? So he's a good arm for Miami. This is a player that you just want to offer a contract to rather than just arbitration. Yeah, you might skimp out a little bit and get a little bit cheaper on him, but kind of why would you want to do that? You want to lock up a guy like Seranthony Dominguez. He's there, he's with you. 83 is one of the best relievers in this league. You got to lock him up. Don't even dink around with arbitration. Now, a guy like Zue Lin, yeah, you would offer him arbitration. Now, take a look at what he would want here. He wants a long-term deal. You could get him at $3.5 million for 2 seasons. Actually, you might even get that a little bit lower here. So about $2.5 million for 2 seasons. Or you can offer him arbitration. He would be fine with it, right? So rather than just dealing with the arbitration hearings and waiting that out, it seems to me like you just bite the bullet on $100K and you offer him this contract for a 2-year deal. All right, guys, so arbitration is completed. So just a couple things that stood out to me. Hunter Wood is going to be hopefully coming back for us. Now, I did for Dallas decide to let go of Javi Garrett and Hobie Milner. It just didn't really make sense to fit in with what we're trying to do with Dallas. Kevin Smith was hard to let go, 65 and a D. You know, it's for that amount of money, it's kind of cheap. But for Guerra and Milner, 57, above 30, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. For Houston, they didn't really need Joey Rickard. I know he would be a nice player for the minor leagues, but I think through free agency and through how the draft is going to go, they'll probably end up getting an outfielder. But Brandon Snyder is going to be a 61, 35 overall, or 35 aged player, but 61 overall player. He's going to be a minor league guy. Now, what you see here is through arbitration, I offered Triggs, Fedorovich, Jace Peterson, all guys above 65, and I wanted to bring those guys back for depth. Now, Waguespack and Valentine are specific instances where I did offer guys contracts. I can't let go of Jezmel Valentine. Like, you see the progression there for him. 249 last season, 250 this season. Very, very consistent. Take a look at the number of games played. 136 to 133, same amount of hits, pretty much the same doubles. Like, the only thing that changed was the power. He had a little bit more power, a little bit more strikeouts, but yeah, overall, Jezmel Valentine is a cornerstone piece for the New Orleans swing. And then you got Waguespack here, who was, you know, obviously he's all right, 3.58, 7 holds. Just offers some depth there for New Orleans. All right, taking a look here at Austin Bryce. He also got a contract. I'm just going to stay on this screen. How about we do that? So, Austin Bryce, 2-year contract. Jake Rogers, 2-year contract. Now, they do have Ricky Ribbett. They're at a 71. They also have Peyton Henry, who did get an upgrade as well, so he's up to a 72. So they've got some catching depth, but Jake Rogers was just a guy that they just didn't really want to let go of. Taylor Williams, Harold Ramirez. Now, Ramirez was offered arbitration, so I did not offer hell or anything because he's a 55D, just really, that's kind of pointless in my mind, but Ramirez did get arbitration offered to him. Taylor Williams, 2-year deal at 7.8. So I like that for Taylor Williams. I like that for the Coyotes. I think they need that type of deal. They need a guy like Taylor Williams in that back in the bullpen. You can see a little bit of a bump to Harold Ramirez from 1.4 to 2.6 in arbitration. Hale and Cody Reed both got arbitration, got a little bit of a bump there for the LA Knights. And since the player models are not loading, we're just going to go here. Guillermo Heredia got a contract offered, but Pedro Florimon did not. He did get arbitration offered as well. Reyes Maranta, arbitration was offered. He was asking a little bit too much money through make an offer, so we decided just to offer him arbitration. Same thing here with Jason Adam. They just wanted way too much money, so arbitration was the way to go. Now, Birch Smith and Trevor Gott, two guys above 60s, but at 32 and 30, I didn't feel like San Francisco needed to bring these guys back. They got a lot of pitching depth. They got a lot of young arms in that franchise, so just don't take away spots and opportunities or innings, specifically innings, for those young pitchers. So might as well not even attempt to bring those guys back. Kevin McCarthy, arbitration eligible, but we did offer him a deal. Gerson Bautista, how can you not? You got to bring him back for a long-term contract at 2 years. Mike Ford actually went crazy this season. 32 homers, 80 ribbies, not a lot of average. This is just what he's going to do. But for Boston, he was good, man. He was really good. So instead of offering arbitration for this guy, lock him up long-term, 3 years for Mike Ford. He'll be 33 when this contract is over. Daniel Ponce de Leon, Ryan Lavarnway, both getting offers. They're above a 65. So even though D potential, they're above 65. Plus, the Pizzazz did give up some pieces to go get Ponce de Leon to back up and shore up their bullpen, so you might as well offer that guy a contract. Now, Blake Swihart was an interesting thing. I could have offered him arbitration here for Pittsburgh, but knowing kind of what their outfield is looking like with McCutchen kind of on the downswing, Brett Walker the second kind of on the downswing a little bit at 31, Swihart was the best guy of the two, or of the three, I guess, if you threw him in. So might as well bring him back for 2 more seasons rather than just 1. Jason Bradford, nothing for Danny Norris because he's not supposed to be here. He's 23 overall. He's one of those guys that just kind of slid in. Just found a team somewhere. But Jason Bradford, he's going to be fine in the bullpen there for Michigan. Not arbitration offer, but actually made an offer. Wojciechowski, 70 overall, D potential. This was a player that struggled mightily early on in the season, but he kind of picked it up at the back end. I think his ERA was above an 8 or a 9. So when he did get called up in September, he did have better outings. But as a 70 overall, you can see even despite the season that he had at a 6.4, he did get a little bit of a push upward. You can see that overall. Chicago needs it. They need the depth there. Arbitration was offered to Silvino Bracho. Arbitration offered to Miguel Andujar and Michael Perez, both guys that are going to be young pieces for the team. You can see just a little bit of a bump for both guys. Jonathan Holder getting a minor bump, a $700K bump in arbitration. We'll see if they accept that. Now, Victor Arano did get an offer here for 3 years at 28, so he'll get pushed above his 30-year-old self. He'll be at 31 years old by the time his contract is up. We're almost done here, guys. Sam Gaviglio gets an offer. Derek Fisher, arbitration. Susac, arbitration. Now, Shohei Ohtani, I want to keep him in here as long as possible in case you guys do want to see him come into the GGBL, okay? So when he's 28 right now, he's racking up the MLB. He's racking up the Major League chase for being one of the greatest players of all time. He's pretty much already on his way there, but for the GGBL, maybe he wants to be, once he's like 36, he can come over here and play, right? But I want to keep him in here as long as possible. Okay, he's 28 right now, but I want to keep him in here as long as we possibly can. So that's why he's a 60, and I want to sign him up for 5 years so that again we can keep him here for as long as we possibly can. So no, I don't have any intentions to bring him up to Minnesota. He's not owned by Minnesota. He's not under contract by Minnesota. He's just in here because I want to keep him alive. I don't want to Thanos snap Shohei Ohtani quite yet. Dwight Smith Jr. getting an offer. Cosma, arbitration. Everybody for Oklahoma other than Smith Jr. got an arbitration offer because I feel like Oklahoma's in that situation where it doesn't really matter the overall right now. You can see Osich at a 60, Kyle Ryan at a 61. Both guys above 30 years old. D potential. They're just one of those guys, and they're one of those teams that just needs depth, man. They need depth. They almost made the playoffs, but it just, knowing their roster, they need all the help they can get. Now, here's the thing with Las Vegas. They got Max Muncy, who, again, is not supposed to be here, but Conley is a 60D. Trevor Hildenberger, 64D. it didn't make sense to bring him back. Hildenberger's a 32-year-old player. Conley's a 31-year-old player. I don't know. It just didn't feel right for Las Vegas, so we're going to let them go. Jorge Bonifacio, 3 years, 7.4, so he's going to get locked up for a long-term deal. 16 homers last season. Had a better season than he did in 2021, so year one of this franchise series. But, you know, Bonifacio getting a little bit more playing time. I feel like Seattle likes him, and he's going to be all right for him. Same thing with Phoenix. I didn't feel like Billy Burns really did much for Phoenix, you know, at the AAA level. Obviously, he would be a starter. He's a 69 overall player. You would have expected stolen bases to be up. Only had 2 last season in 13 games. He's supposed to be a speedy guy. You could offer him a minor league contract, but I feel like Phoenix is young in the outfield. They've got some guys that are going to be able to play versus a guy like Billy Burns who's 33, right? Same thing with Zach Groscup. Just didn't make sense to bring him back. Now for the Atlanta Sting, Almora is a 71. He can contribute. He's a guy that could contribute big time in a big way. He's 28 years old. That's a lot of times in baseball, that is your prime of your career, is at 28. Once you hit that mark, you're gonna go off. So I feel like they're finding a little nugget here, a little diamond in the rough with Albert Almora. Obviously, he had some good seasons for the Chicago Cubs when he first started his major league career. But I feel like, you know, especially with those upgrades, you guys can see the pluses there. That's not me doing that. That's just him progressing down at the minor leagues for Atlanta. So I feel like giving him a shot is going to be the right move. Brantley gets an offer. Hyun-Soo Kim, no offer, but Marco Hernandez does get an offer. Kim's at 35. Again, just kind of no point in offering a guy like that a deal. All right, guys, so one last thing to talk about in this video. I know it's a little bit of a longer one, about 30-plus minutes long, so thank you guys for tuning in. There's timestamps in the description and pinned comment below if you guys want to just jump around. But I wanted to talk real quick about 40-man rosters, like putting guys on it, taking guys off. And I decided there's no point because there isn't a Rule 5 draft. So even though the computer thinks there's going to be one, I control all the teams, so nobody's drafting anybody in the Rule 5. So they're going to head right back to the team in which they came. So there's really no point to worry about the 40-man rosters, plus the fact that once we get into free agency and teams will start signing guys and putting them on their 40-man, this 40-man roster is going to jump from like 40 to 45, maybe 46, and then we're going to have to reshuffle the rosters anyway. So there's no point because you don't know who you're going to sign. You know what I mean? It could totally shake up the entire makeup of the entire team. So I wanted to mention that really quick before we get into the next topic of discussion here. So what I want to talk about here real quick is the exclusive free agents. So remember when in the last episode we talked about Tim Anderson and Roberto Osuna? Those guys were 85 plus overall players, and they were exclusive free agents. So they were going to head to free agency. So as you guys know from the last video, I'll just reiterate it here again, but if Colorado is not able to re-sign through the wheel spin, if they can't get Tim Anderson back, or if Michigan can't get Roberto Osuna back, the team that gets them, the team that signs them, has to give their first-round draft pick of the GGBL prospect draft over to Colorado or over to Michigan, right? So that's what we're going to determine right here and right now. And the reason why we're going to do that now, and you guys aren't supposed to see that quite yet, but the reason why we're going to do this now is because we can't actually do the draft when these two guys are still available because there's draft picks involved. So let's say Colorado loses Tim Anderson to Richmond, right? Richmond has to give our first round draft pick to Colorado. So what we're determining right here, right now, is we're just getting these two guys out of the way, basically. So that way we know whose draft pick that Colorado is going to get and whose draft pick Michigan's going to get. Now, they could get him back. They could easily get him back, but we'll find out. So as you guys know, Colorado has 5 extra picks in order to get Tim Anderson back. So that's what we're going to determine right here and right now. So this is for Tim Anderson. Now, for Michigan, I'm going to take Colorado's 5 off of here and then add 5 extra slots here for Michigan. So if you guys can look here, I'll do like Michigan has 16 slots. That's because of their record, right? So that's because of their record. So they would have 21 slots. And you guys can see that Colorado has 22 slots. So there you go. So, all right, Tim Anderson, here we go. This is where Tim Anderson is going to go in free agency. Watch, he'll land right on Colorado again. Watch, it's going to be hilarious. New Orleans swing. All right, so the New Orleans swing gets our boy here, Tim Anderson. Now let's go back. Chris Castro's gone. Tim Anderson's here. Except roster changes, yes. And there we go. So I'll clean these up real quick. And now we're going to determine the next one, which will be Roberto Osuna. So where's Roberto Osuna going to go to? We're going to, let's see, we're going to delete 5 of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Colorado should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oops, shoot. Let's just do instances here. Colorado has 16. There you go. So we're back here. All right, so let's say Michigan. We got to get Michigan 5 more slots. And I'm showing you guys this step by step because I want you guys to know and see that I didn't fudge it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the rule. They get 5. We will shuffle this up so that they're not in order. And this is for Roberto Osuna. You get to see where Osuna is going to land. Let's see where he's going to go. Watch, he'll go to Colorado. Boston. All right, Osuna. And there you go. So Roberto Osuna and Tim Anderson all figured out, guys. So that's how that's going to work. So let's go real quick to the pitching rotation. You guys can see it. Osuna is in there. Sweet. And then, of course, New Orleans with their lineup. Tim Anderson. All right. So there you go. So where does Luigi Mazza fit into all this? I think he's probably going to have to play second base. Tommy LaStella will probably be a DH or something. That's what I'm thinking. Or Luigi Mazza has to go to third. I don't really know how they're going to work that out, but yeah, that's how that process is going to work, guys. So one last thing what I wanted to talk to you guys about real quick, and we're not doing anything here with the free agency wheel spin right now, but what I want to talk about to end this video is I want to explain the process here. So again, the reason why we wanted to do the Osuna and Anderson thing first is we wanted to know what draft picks were being exchanged, right? So we know that Boston gave up theirs to Michigan, and we know that New Orleans gave up theirs to Colorado. So basically, Michigan now has 2 first-rounders, and Colorado has 2 first-rounders. So that's just kind of why we wanted to do that. Now what we can do is we can understand what the draft order is going to look like, but we have to do the draft and the GGBL draft first. We have to do that first. And now I know I'm on the free agent team needs list right now, or the Google form here right now, but the reason why we want to do the draft first is because we have to understand what the team needs are going to be once we get into free agency. So a little bit different of how we're going to do this season from what we did in year number 1. So kind of hopefully you guys can stick with me here because I want to explain this, because once we get into the live stream and once we get going, I know that people are going to be confused. I know they're going to be confused, but this is literally the only way that I could think of, and my other patrons and other people that were involved, I won't name names because I don't want you guys to feel like I'm not getting you guys involved, but there were a couple people that helped me out with this kind of idea. And the reason why we're implementing something like this is so that once we get into free agency, we don't have this huge list of free agents. This huge list of free agents, really good free agents as well. Like there's a lot of 90s, there's a lot of high 80s in here. We don't want these guys necessarily stealing a job away from custom prospects that are on the rise, right? Now, let's say, like, for example, I showed you guys Luigi Mazza, right? So let's say that Jose Altuve ends up going to New Orleans, for example, right? So now they just have a loaded infield. Where does Luigi Mazza fit into that? Now you've got Anderson, you got Altuve. Does somehow Luigi Mazza, who was a 75 overall player, a potential, he gets blocked? He just gets railroaded like that? Now, New Orleans would be really happy because now they're just loaded. But Mazza and his real person behind it, a viewer, wouldn't be too happy with that, I don't think. Your guy just got railroaded, now he's not getting any playing time, right? So the reason we do the draft first is so then we kind of understand who the team is drafted. We get a better sense of what the team looks like, what the roster looks like. We just overall have a better understanding of what the team actually needs. Because again, we would hate to see a team just have Salvador Perez. I mean, he would be the obvious starter for any team across the GGBL. Like, look at the catcher here for Columbus. 74, 72, 73, 70. Like, he would start for any team. But if he just happened to join Washington, for example, they've got Zunino and Alex Jackson. Alex Jackson has been playing well. He'd just be railroaded. Like, a team's got to do what a team's got to do. They got to improve, but, you try to do it in a smart, intelligent way. A team that actually really, really needs Salvador Perez. They're desperate for Salvador Perez, which is why you guys are now getting involved. So again, after the draft, and we're gonna do the draft the same way that we've always done it. We're gonna do it where patron prospects get to choose their top 5 listed teams. We spin the wheel to determine where those guys are gonna go. Let's just go to Janil Rivera, for example. So this was his top 5 teams, and we ended up landing on the LA Knights for Janil. Now, for open submission prospects and prospects that were won through contests, you guys don't have that ability to choose your top 5. So that's just kind of how that works. So we're going to do patrons first, as we always do. Patrons first, then we go into the actual draft order. So we go into the draft order where we do worst team in the GGBL to best team in the GGBL until all prospects are drafted. So that's how the draft's going to work. So again, we do the draft first so that we know what teams actually need. Because they could end up signing or drafting some really good prospects that they don't necessarily need starting pitching anymore. They don't need catching anymore. They don't need outfield anymore, so on and so forth. But which leads me to the Google Forms. And which is why I need your guys' help. I need you guys to help determine what the team needs actually are. So I've got in this Google form, I've got all 30 teams listed. And what you guys get to do is there's 7 sections. This would be the first section, is just putting your email address in here. So make sure you guys do that. That's making your submission official. What the free agent process is going to do this year is it's going to be a little bit different because, again, we don't want to see teams just railroading some of their superstars that are on the upswing, right? Now, I know teams will try to win at all costs, like Luigi Mazza and Jose Altuve, for example, right? Teams are going to want to win at all costs. If you can get Jose Altuve, you're going to go get Jose Altuve. But I want to try to put a handle on that as much as I can. Anyway, let's talk about like Washington, for example, right? So let's actually go to Washington really quick. Let's go to Washington and see what they need. In my opinion, I look at their roster, and the immediate things that stands out to me is they need pitching badly, right? Relief pitching, same thing. Closing, they could use that too. And the good thing is that we have pitching as just one category. Starters, relievers, closers, anything, right? Catching, not so much. They don't necessarily need a catcher. They got Zunino at an 84, Jackson at a 79. They don't necessarily need catching. Could you get one? Yeah, but do they absolutely need it? No. First base, you got Alexander King. He's fine. He's a B potential player. He's all right. Brandon Lau, 89. They don't need seconds. They don't necessarily need third base because they got Taylor here at 240, 15 in a rookie season, 78A. Don't necessarily need third. Could they improve immediately? Today, tomorrow? Yes, they could improve there, but I don't think they necessarily need it. If they believe in DJ Taylor, I don't think they need it. Shortstop, you could argue. Really, that would be a healthy argument there, but I think that they can move. I don't think that they need second and short. I don't think that they necessarily would want to go after middle infield as one of your options. But outfield, I think they do. Tomas, Fargas, Ray, Benson, and Turner, I think just with those ratings, I think that your top two for Washington would be pitching and outfield. Those would be my top two for pitching and outfield for Washington. So let's go back and kind of show off how this is all going to work. So as we did it last year for year one's offseason, we worked down the list. So literally we said Vladimir Guerrero's up on the board. We figured out where he was going to go. We spun the wheel. We figured out where he was going to go. We landed on somebody. That's where he was going to go. Altuve was next. Perez was next. Arenado would be next. Flaherty's up. And this is how this is going to work again this season. So we're literally going to go down the list until all the 90s are done. Then we re-enter teams that have already picked. So let's say like Washington picked up Flaherty, right? So they got the 94 overall pitcher with Jack Flaherty. They can re-enter the free agent bidding, I guess you'd say, once we are now in the 80s. Let's say they grabbed Whit Merrifield, for example. They don't need a second baseman, but let's just say, for example, they got Merrifield in 84, right? They can't get anybody else in the 80s. They can't re-enter the free agent bid until the 70s tier, until the 70s group, right? So that's how you got to look at it. It's like it's all done in groups. It's all done in groupings. So how our free agency is going to work is the same way. We're going to go down the list and in order, but the only time that Washington will be able to get themselves and put their name into the hat, into the drawing board, into the drawing, I should say, is if you guys as a community voted and the majority said pitching and outfield. Let's say, for example, you guys, I submitted this, I linked it to you guys, and 30 to 100 people filled out this survey. Well, there's going to be a variety of different options. But let's say pitching and outfield agree with me. Let's say you guys, for the majority, agree with me. 57% said pitching is a need and 32% said outfield as a need. Obviously, those would be the two biggest numbers. Those will officially be Washington's two needs, their top two needs that they have to fill in this offseason, right? So how this is going to work, this basically means that Washington will not be able to get into the running for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They will not be able to say, yes, we're interested in Vladimir Guerrero. Yes, we're interested in Jose Altuve. Yes, we're interested in Salvador Perez. They can't do that because what you guys voted on as a community is what they absolutely needed was pitching, starting pitching and outfield, right? Right. So why we're doing it that way is because what I don't want to see happen is I don't want to see a creation of super teams, number one, and I don't want to see guys get railroaded like we just talked about. I don't want to see players getting railroaded when their careers are just getting started, like a guy like Luigi Mazza, for example, or a guy like Bendito Ramirez for New York as a center fielder. I just don't want to see him get railroaded by Byron Buxton. Like it doesn't make much sense to me, right? So keeping it realistic, I think this is the best way to do it. So Vladimir Guerrero comes up, and you guys said that Washington needs starting pitching and outfield. Well, can Vlad play outfield? No, he can't. He's just a first and third baseman, so they're out of the running. Altuve, second and short, so he's out of the running. Salvi, catcher and first, he's out of the running. Nolan Arenado, third and first, he's out of the running. The only time that Washington can get into the bidding or into the free agent mix is when Jack Flaherty finally shows up. That's when they can get onto the wheel spin, because you guys would have said pitching and outfield, right? So let's just go up and back this up here, and let's go to year two free agency. So basically this list here, Washington would keep all of their their spins, right? So they would be competing against all these other teams that said pitching is a top need. So Washington would keep their 8 spins or their 8 slices. Let's say St. Louis, you guys voted St. Louis to need pitching, so they would actually, so Washington would be competing with their 8 slices compared to St. Louis's 16 slices. Let's say Seattle said that they needed pitching. Let's say San Francisco said they needed pitching. So playoff teams have less slices than non-playoff teams, if you guys could kind of get the idea there. So non-playoff teams have a better chance at getting a good player than playoff teams do. So you guys can see kind of how that works, right? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. This is not a premiere, this is not a live stream, so I don't really know if you guys get it or not. But let's say that Washington misses out on Jack Flaherty, right? One of those other teams that you guys voted on, one of those other teams that you guys voted on that had a majority, like New York. Let's say you said New York for the majority said pitching was a need and corner infield was a need. So both of these two positional needs in these groups were the highest need for New York. So they were competing against New York in the wheel spin and other teams as well, but New York ended up winning Jack Flaherty, right? Let's say that happened. Well, now we move down because Flaherty has been signed. We move down to Buxton. So because Washington needs an outfielder, because you said Washington needs an outfielder, now Washington is still up to go get Byron Buxton. So now they have to compete against all the other teams in the GGBL that said outfield is a need for us as well, as a top 2 need. Let's say they don't get Byron Buxton, right? We go down one more time, right? So now Liam Hendricks is up. They can throw their hat into Liam Hendricks' ring because they said that they needed pitching. You guys said they needed pitching. Let's say they don't get Liam Hendricks in the wheel spin. Now it's Jose Ramirez time. Can Jose Ramirez play outfield? Yes, he can play left field. They would therefore be in the mix to go get Jose Ramirez. Once that position has been filled for Washington, they're not going to be able to go after any other outfielder that comes up. The only time that Washington's going to be able to come back into the fold is if somebody that can pitch comes into the fold. If they need to sign a pitcher, they need to have their top 2 needs completely met in order to open up themselves into everything else. So does that make sense? So let's go back up to the top here. Let's say, for example, Washington gets Jack Flaherty, right? You can check off starting pitching. They've met their starting pitching need. They can't get Byron Buxton because he's in the 90 range. The only time that they can re-enter is in the 80s. So they got Flaherty at a 94. They can re-enter in the 80s. Now, they can't go after another pitcher because they just got Flaherty at a 94. So they can't get Kimbrel. They can't get McCullers. They can't get Barrios. They can't get Giolito, so on and so forth, right? So the next thing up that they could possibly do would be outfield. They have to fulfill outfield. Chris Bryant can fulfill outfield. He can play outfield. Third, first, in all outfield positions. Let's say, if they get lucky again, let's say they get Chris Bryant, right? So they've met their 2 positional needs that you guys voted on. They got Flaherty at a 94. They got Chris Bryant at an 87. Their 2 positional needs have been not theoretically, but officially, their 2 positional needs have been met. They got their pitching. They got their outfield. Now what they can do is they are now up on the board for everybody else, but it's not in the 80s. They got to get back into the 70s. So they could be on the board for Skubal. They could be up on the board for Smith. They could be up on the board for Sims, Paddock, Kluber, Hamilton, you name it, right? But here's the caveat. Here's the catch. For every guy that they sign, they have to be subtracted 1 of their slices, right? So this one would be gone for Flaherty. That one would be gone for Bryant. And that leaves more of an opportunity for other teams and less of an opportunity for them. Because now they have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have 5 slices compared to everybody else's slices, right? Which leaves them at more of a disadvantage, right? So they have to get really lucky in order to get anybody else up on this board, right? So again, I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to me. Maybe I need to make a tutorial video on it. Maybe I need to show more examples. You guys let me know in the comment section of this. And but I'm sure that it's going to go smoothly in the live stream. I'm thinking because we've got the 31st, we got New Year's Eve on Friday night, and we got New Year's Day on Saturday. I think let's not waste any time. Let's actually dive right in and go Tuesday night, GGBL Draft, not free agency, but GGBL Draft, Tuesday night, the 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'll do the GGBL Draft on Tuesday the 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then on Thursday the 30th, so right before New Year's Eve, Thursday the 30th, we'll do the free agent wheel spins. So guys, that's it. That's all I got for you today. Leave a like if you like this thing. I know it was kind of a longer video, but there's a lot to explain, a lot of things. Again, I mentioned it before, there's a lot of things about this league that you try to just make everything as fair as you possibly can and realistic as you possibly can, because you just don't want to cheese the league, man. You want it to be fair. You got to dot every I and cross every T in order to make this thing happen and make this thing work. So again, guys, leave a like if you like this thing. I will see you on the 28th for the GGBL Draft and the 30th for the free agency wheel spin. So I will see you guys in the next one. As always, thank you for watching, and peace.